Welcome to the Music Factory's first edition podcast series. First edition with our guest today is Marc Fendel. Marc is an accomplished saxophone player. He is the creator and founder of a YouTube channel called Music Education for All. It's a great resource for everything you could imagine about music education as far as music theory goes, or saxophone, and Marc's got a great personality, and it's a lot of fun to watch his content. I thought there'd be a lot we could learn from someone like Marc, anyway, it would just be fun to hang out with him. So without further ado,
cheers, folks. How's it going?
Here we go. There's Marc, and we are now live. Tell us about Music Education for All.
Oh, man. Well, Music Education for All started in 2011. This was kind of my response to quitting my job, a job that I dearly loved and started. Mm-hmm. And as we were talking about Seattle Drum School yesterday and how much I love Steve Smith and Christy and loved working there, I quit a job that I loved, hiked the Pacific Crest Trail. And before I hiked the Pacific Crest Trail from Mexico to Canada, I made about 350 videos on YouTube, and I started Music Education for All, which is a YouTube channel that's just dedicated to sharing as much as I could share everything that I know, trying to share everything that I learned, from Berkeley and from all of my great teachers, including you. And so that's what I've been trying to do, is just have this place where on YouTube that I can share lessons. And I've never been cheesy. I've never been like, sign up for this or that program or whatever. I've never really been into that. I always figured that that information should be free, at least. Just, I really believe in having a private music teacher, but I wanted to share everything that I learned. So I started from the very beginning and shared everything about saxophone, from putting it together to, playing every single note on the horn. And that started almost 10 years ago now.
Wow.
So here we are in the year of COVID and whatever.
Totally. Yeah.
And, I'm trying to kind of, last year I didn't do very much on that channel, but this year, there's a lot to break down.
Yeah.
So here we are.
And about how many videos do you guys have up right now?
I was looking today. I think that there was about 750 or so.
That's incredible, man. I hear 750 and I think to myself, like, that's a video a day for 2 years. I mean, no one's going to do that. I mean, it's like climbing a mountain, like you don't think you can't almost imagine when you're going to be at the top, sometimes,
mm-hmm.
or like,
that's hustle.
It's like
that's
the Pacific Crest Trail that you hiked so amazingly.
I mean, that's the hustle though, I think, and, I mean, that, like, from practicing for 8 hours a day,
Yeah.
Like for years, it's just another like dedication, and to be honest, all of those videos too, it sounds like a lot, but there was some months there that I was knocking out like, 4 or 5 videos a day and treating it like a job, like,
wow,
just like hammering home at it, and trying to make short videos, things that were not long form, and getting right to the point. Like, no like introduction, none of that. Just like, you want to learn how to play an F on saxophone, boom, you know.
Yeah. And
Um,
Mark, tell us about how you got started playing music. What was your first memory, musical memory, or sort of memory around music, and how did you get into it, and and how did you settle on the saxophone?
yeah, those are good questions. I grew up in a musical family. First of all, my dad had a record collection, several thousand jazz records that I grew up with. And both of my grandfathers were violinists. One of them actually went to Juilliard um, a long, long time ago. Um, I never knew him to play violin. That's a longer story. But anyway,
One of my uncles went to Juilliard. I never heard him play, but
yeah, no, I mean,
that's
I know that he was there and I have photos of him from playing, but I mean, the short of it is that he was in the war, in the Korean War, and then he got out of the war and, had a family and, and, he had had a family to feed and the music was just not in the cards for him.
and where did he live? I mean, was he in? I mean,
He was in Los Angeles
wow,
predominantly.
amazing.
Like Chicago. He grew up in Chicago, but lived his adult life in Los Angeles. My other grandfather played violin as well and lived
Wow.
in Portland.
And are these
Um,
both on your father's side or your mother's side?
so the grandfather went to Juilliard was my mom's dad, and then
Amazing.
my dad's dad played a little bit too. My dad played piano, but
Hmm.
I grew up in a household of, my dad, was a radio host for 25 years
Yeah,
and
sort of like a well-known radio host in Portland,
yeah, in
Oregon, correct?
Portland,
Yeah,
and my
the
dad
local
had
radio.
10,000 records, man. I mean, I was just,
Oh,
like I have photos of it and still it's quite impressive. It's not what it used to be.
yeah,
But he still has, I mean, it is intense. His record collection
yeah,
is still really, really impressive. And so that's how I grew up, just around music, like, and and around jazz music, pretty much, like, that was it. And amongst those people that I grew up with, the music that I grew up with was like Ella and Louie and a lot of the swing guys like Ben Webster and Harry Sweets Edison and Zoot Sims and Clark Terry and the Duke Ellington Band and um,
yeah.
Benny Carter and guys like that, Johnny Hodges, people like that.
Pretty much
And
the
then and
legends.
then like amazing. And I grew up with a lot of those swing guys, and then my dad's taste shifted. Um, and then he got into all the bebop guys, and then by the time I was in high school, my dad was just, like, had all the Blue Note and, like, all that stuff was,
I
around all
know.
of a sudden,
It's
like
great stuff.
he was into Train and all the, bebop, Charlie Parker and all that stuff. He was just loved it. And I grew up with all of that music, Miles Davis. And so I didn't really have a choice. I really
Well,
wanted to be a trumpet player. That's
oh, yeah,
really what I wanted to be.
sure.
And oh my God, I am so glad I am not. My dad saved me, man. I am so serious. I'm so glad I don't play that instrument. Sorry, trumpet players. I know I'm gonna get dogged here, but like, that's the hardest instrument in the freaking world. And saxophone is just such an easy and wonderful instrument. I just think I just had so much gratification when I was in fifth grade from the saxophone. It played right out of the case, man. I loved it.
Yeah, I want to hear about that. Like, What was it like when you first picked up the instrument, and how did you know right away it was the instrument that you wanted to play?
I loved it, man. My dad had a couple instruments that he got from his work buddy, and my dad was in real estate when I was growing up, and this guy let us borrow a couple instruments, and I don't know. I remember opening up the case in fifth grade and smelling the case and that musty kind of case smell and the old instrument with all of the keys and the mechanisms that just looked so like I I mean I was totally taken by the instrument, even without playing it. All I wanted to do was play it. And he loaned us a couple instruments, and then my dad got me a nice instrument. Couple.
What grade? What age are we talking here?
I started in fifth grade, so I was like probably 12 or so. And then my dad, when I was in eighth grade, my dad, we knew the owners of this pawn shop in downtown Portland. They used to go to the same synagogue as us. And my dad said, if a good saxophone comes in sometime, just let me know. Well, a nice saxophone came in. It was a Selmer Mark 6. This is like the holy grail of saxophones, basically. And I didn't know it at the time. I was just a little kid, I think I was in seventh grade. Pretty sure I was in seventh grade. And they had two saxophones there. They had a king, and it was a lower, intermediate range king saxophone. Pretty nice horn, actually, as I remember. And the Selmer Mark 6 in there. And Dad brought him home, and he was like, "Which one do you like?" And I just like put my hands around him. And I have tiny hands. I still have small hands. And I couldn't get my hands around the 6. And I liked the king better. And then my dad found out like that the 6 was the holy grail. And from a couple of his buddies, musician buddies, and they were like, "If you don't buy that Selmer Mark 6 for $650, I am going to buy it."
Yeah.
And my dad bought me that instrument. And that instrument actually, I played until 1992. And then in 1992, Jeff Clayton found me another Selmer, super balanced
the Clayton brothers, right?
Of the Clayton brothers, yeah, exactly, of Los Angeles, and Jeff found me this instrument, and he bought it sight unseen, which was a very bold thing to do, and an amazing thing to do.
Like he just bought you a saxophone.
Yeah.
Like you're not paying him. He's just like, I know who you are, or I know what you do. Or I can see that you've got something special to say. Or
exactly. He bought me this saxophone. Now, to be clear, he bought it because he knew that I needed it, and his student needed my Selmer Mark 6.
Gotcha.
And so we did this like trade, this 3-way kind of swap thing.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable, and his student was totally happy. And man, check it out. It's right here, dude.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. There it is. That is the horn from all those years ago. And the funny thing is that I had sold this horn and then I bought it back.
I want this sort of podcast. This podcast is all about sort of creativity and education.
Yeah.
And so I'm interested to know like when you first or what your feelings were about personal expression through music and jazz, and when you first sort of discovered that element and who out there might have sparked your creativity as far as from a mentorship role, and
sure.
And then I'd like to segue that into talking about education, both your experience with education as a kid with your various teachers,
Sure.
and then going all the way up to when I moved back from college, moved and I ran into you, and you had told me you were working at this great school in town called the Seattle Drum School,
Yeah.
which is an amazing place, great people. We started working together there,
Yeah.
and have been very close ever since. We made a couple records, and one of them I suggest everyone buys. It's called Swamp Dweller. There's 2 Swamp Dweller albums. One of them features Reggie Watts, which you might know from the James Corden show, and a bunch of monster fist players in town, which you can find out about if you buy the record. And then the second record has a remix by DJ Swamp, which was pretty freaking cool. Let's fast forward to, you're teaching at the Seattle Drum School. You told me about this great place. I go in there. As it turns out, I took my first lesson there many years ago. First, I think it was Scott Law might have been my first teacher for a few weeks, and then Paul Hinklin of Sad Happy was the next teacher I had, and then pretty shortly after, switched gears completely, and at that point it was like all Jimi Hendrix blues and Seattle rock, Nirvana or whatever, Soundgarden mixed with Hendrix and classic Zeppelin and everything. But it wasn't too long after that I quickly got into the jazz band at Roosevelt and started taking jazz lessons with Milo Peterson, I think. But yeah, I mean, like, what do you think about music education, and why do you think it's important? And what are some of the techniques that you've learned as far as how to, not just what I'm curious about is not just teaching the music, but actually life lessons. When you're working with a kid or an adult, and you're kind of like getting in there, and you can really tell there's some growth happening. What are some insights you've learned about that process?
I think, one of my main philosophies about, music education, I mean, if we're talking about one-on-one, private music lessons, is I really like to find out, I know you and I had talked about this, but I really like to find out people's direction, what people hope to do, what their goals are. And I really want to create positivity. And I think that's the most important thing, is bringing like joy to people's lives, and like really just making people feel good about learning an instrument, no matter where they are in their journey. I think that it's such a sacred place to be in the position to share. And, I just want to have a positive musical experience and really find out from folks, what I can do to provide that. And, if I start there, I think that's a pretty good place to start. So that'd be kind of my philosophy, kind of on a broad base, one-on-one type of teaching style.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I find that as I'm working with people, and this is something I casually learned from Steve, but just from taking lots of lessons from lots of great, people, all the way up to legendary, to just great teachers.
Yeah.
But is to kind of meet each student where they're at.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter where they are. As a teacher, as someone who's working with especially young people, to be able to identify quickly where they are, and also sort of to learn who they are as a person, where they are as a person on many levels. Like, on some level, one thing I've learned is that those of us that really get what's possible with music are quite a bit more rare than I would have thought.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of after teaching like sort of thousands of people.
Yeah.
To get someone who's as serious or gets it with the same passion is much more rare. So I think what that means is that we're very special people, artists and musicians and people who take it as seriously as we have, but not just to prove something, but because we really do see the magic, and understand, like you said, what's going on that stage between those legendary players when they're interacting with each other and spontaneously having a conversation about something that you just don't see happen very often like that.
Yeah.
But regardless, as a teacher, none of that, I mean, it's part of the spectrum, but that doesn't really matter. It's what matters is, where is this person and where do they want to go and how can you be of service?
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's musically,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's actually much deeper than music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
Sometimes it's just about connection,
yeah, just connection and mentorship. And I believe that, like, for a kid or an adult to have a one-on-one instructor every week for 6 months to sometimes 4 years. I mean, what's the longest student you had? I mean, I've had students for 4 years, 5 years,
Yeah. I had one kid from fourth grade through senior in high school.
Yeah.
Nick Wold, Roosevelt.
Oh, wow.
Actually,
Sounds familiar.
I think that's the longest student that I ever had. I think that he was actually at all of my places in Seattle.
Yeah. So to think about, like, this person has their life, especially if it's a kid, they have their family, they go to class, but like nowhere else in their life do they have someone who's not a family member, who's pretty cool, who they can work through stuff with on a one-on-one basis, where you can really identify, like, what's their learning style, are they more auditory, are they more visual, and how can you help them best, and to have someone one-on-one help you through that stuff. I think the value of that is tremendously underestimated, and I hope to, like, provide a platform for more of that,
Yeah, maybe the value in Music Factory, maybe you provide more value by stating those added benefits. Those value added benefits are human connection. I mean, that is tangible. I mean, that is really heavy.
Yeah, that's yeah.
I mean, like, I was teaching a lot of autistic kids, at the Seattle Drum School back in the day, and every single kid was totally different, man. That they all had unique styles and of learning, and unique ways of communicating. And I was the one who had to adjust, and that is really, like, what needs to happen is, we as educators need to be, like, super flexible, for whoever we're going to spend our time with and share music with. We kind of, like, break down those social benefits,
Totally.
of why it is that it's important that kids have music education and have connection with an adult that is not their family member, that's outside of their realm, like, there is something very
and not
deep
just
going on here,
Yeah, not just an adult, but someone who is hand selected as being someone who understands the creative process.
Right.
Like the kind of person who saw those people on the stage and
Right.
understood what they were getting at, that
Mm-hmm.
intangible human expression, which is like,
Mm-hmm.
if that's not sort of close to like the reason for life, you know, in a way,
Right.
I don't know what is, you know, it's just
Mm-hmm.
it's just so magical
Mm-hmm.
and
Or
incredible.
maybe, maybe like selling self-expression, through music is like really like the thing, maybe,
Mm-hmm.
or just that selling the idea of, that muse or that kind of spark of creativity, man. Like
Yeah.
I can provide that for you, you
Or
know?
just the ability to have an original thought in a way, you know, sort
Yeah.
of like we're training people to be able to take some skills and like become the creator of their own original thoughts, you know.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah. That would be really cool, man.
Yeah. Tell me about what you're up to these days. In general, we've got Music Education for All.
Yeah.
Where is that at? And let's talk about your other business.
During the day, I worked for my partner, Jane Simmons. She has a small natural remedies company called Sister Sage Herbs, and we make tinctures and balms. And yeah, Jane's been doing this for a long time, and we just love what we do. And Jane sold at Pike Place Market for the last 6 years until COVID-19. And that kind of wiped out about 80% of our business. And now we're selling online. And
Sheesh. Are you picking anything? Are you picking up any speed online or?
yeah, I mean, a little bit. Certainly with email marketing, we're definitely doing better with our website and with Amazon and Fulfilled by Amazon. We're selling our products, and that's what I mostly do during the day. And I've been playing tough on the weekends and making a lot of music and a lot of recordings since COVID-19, and getting my serious starting to get my recording chops back up, and learning a lot about video and streaming. And geez, I mean, I've been really just trying to get a handle on so many new skills in the last month. So yeah.
Amazing. Let's sign off for now.
Right on, brother. Well, you have a good evening.
You too, man. Thanks a lot for doing this, and we'll get it right.
Right on, brother. We'll just keep on pushing.
All right, man. Cheers.
Cheers.
Goodbye.